The Dreamer and the Dragons. A passage through destiny.
Long ago, in the places where the land meets mist and shadow, I watched as destinies took shape. I am Nimue, keeper of quiet waters and ancient secrets. To some, I am legend. To others, a distant memory. Before Arthur drew the sword, before Camelot's walls rose to touch the heavens, there was Merlin, a man bound to fate, yet tethered to mystery. I watched him shape kingdoms and weave the threads of destiny, even as he wrestled with powers few could understand. This is his story, the beginning of what would become myth. I was there when destiny called him, and so I will tell you of Merlin as he was, before he became the legend. In a land the ancients called Albion, where mist clings to the hills and rivers weave through valleys steeped in secrets, Merlin's tale took root. Albion is a place of old powers, where the line between worlds blurs and shadows seem to carry memories older than men. Beneath these shadowed hills, a woman named Ellen brought forth a son.
Like and subscribe.
Ellen was no common woman, a healer versed in the ancient lore of roots and stones. She knew the quiet magic dwelling in the earth. One night, under a sky where clouds swallowed the moon's light, Ellen felt a presence stir in the dark, a being not bound by earthly breath, slipping through the veil like a whisper from the edge of existence. It came to her, silent and vast, from realms unknown, and from this strange union Merlin was conceived, marked by a bloodline of mortal flesh and otherworldly flame, a force that defied any understanding of the living. From his first breath, he drew the forest's creatures close. Birds lingered near his cradle, wolves watched from the tree line, and even the air seemed to stir differently in his presence. His gaze was unsettling, bearing a depth that reached far beyond his years. Ellen knew her son was marked by destiny's weight, as if an unseen shadow had claimed him before he could even walk. She guarded him as best she could, knowing he was born to walk the line between realms, bound to powers she could scarcely grasp. Merlin was her son, but already she felt he belonged to a fate far older than she or any soul could claim. In those days, Merlin's village lay nestled near the edge of Coed Caerluthon, the Caledonian forest, a place ancient and vast, stretching across the heart of Albion like a dark sea of trees. He spent his youth close to its borders, drawn by the quiet presence of the trees, the thick old earth beneath them, and the way light itself seemed different under the forest canopy. Yet, as he grew, the confines of the village could no longer contain him. The forest called to him with a voice only he could hear. So, not long after he came of age, Merlin left the familiar paths behind him, slipping into the depths of Coed Caerluthon. He moved with no destination but forward, trusting the rhythms of the land to guide him. He drank from cold rivers, his footsteps muffled by moss older than any kingdom, and slept beneath towering oaks that had weathered centuries of sun, storm, and silence. The world around him was no longer a place to pass through but a teacher, revealing itself with a patience Merlin learned to respect. In time, the spirits of the land began to show themselves. The Sidhe appeared first, flitting at the edges of his sight, elusive and watchful. These were beings of air and shadow, spirits that men feared yet revered. They saw Merlin as neither fully mortal nor wholly one of their own. Yet they sensed a kinship, drawn to the power in his blood and his willingness to listen. It was here in the deep forest that he met the Horned One, known among the ancients as Cernunnos, a god who moved as part of the wilderness, crowned with antlers and shrouded in twilight. Cernunnos was no distant deity. He was a figure born of Albion itself, a guardian of all wild things, with antlers that stretched like the branches of ancient oaks and eyes that held the weight of seasons uncounted. In the silence of their meeting, Merlin began to grasp the nature of magic, not as a force to wield, but as Albion's very breath, pulsing through all living things. From these spirits, he learned that power is not a thing to own, but a bond to uphold. And so, in his years alone in the wild, Merlin became more than the boy who left his village. He became part of Albion itself, bound to its mysteries and destined to shape its future. In time, whispers of Merlin's gifts found their way beyond the woods of Coed Caluthan, carried through villages, across valleys, and into the courts of kings. The name Merlin drifted to Vortigern, a king with grand ambitions, but whose fortunes were as unsteady as the ground upon which he built. Vortigern had chosen a high hill for his fortress, overlooking lands he wished to claim. But each night the stones laid by day would collapse by dawn, as if the earth itself rebelled against him. Desperate and suspicious, Vortigern called for Merlin, hoping this strange youth might reveal what none of his own seers or builders could discern. And so, Merlin was summoned from his solitude and brought before the king, a figure unlike any Vortigern had seen. There was an agelessness to Merlin's gaze, something both young and ancient, as if he carried the weight of the land within him. Standing on the hill where Vortigern's fortress crumbled time and again, Merlin grew still, attuning himself to the place. He sensed a disturbance below, a conflict not of stone and soil, but of forces deeper than any man could see. Closing his eyes, he spoke of a vision that rose from the depths of the earth itself. Beneath their feet, he said, lay two dragons, one red as blood, the other white as bone. The two were locked in a fierce struggle, their battle shaking the hill's very foundation. The red dragon, Merlin prophesied, symbolized the Britons, the ancient people of the land, while the white dragon embodied the Saxons, whose strength and numbers grew each year. Their conflict, Merlin warned, would not end here, but would shape the destiny of the land. This struggle, as old as Albion itself, would continue. An endless turning of fate that would scar the land and shape its future rulers. Vortigern listened, uneasy, and yet captivated by Merlin's words. He had sought only to build a fortress, but here was a prophecy that reached far beyond his reign, into the generations yet to come. Though impressed by Merlin's insight, Vortigern felt an edge of wariness, sensing in Merlin a power beyond his control. This youth was no mere seer. He was a vessel for forces both unpredictable and, perhaps, unfathomable. Merlin left Vortigern's hill, having revealed what lay beneath, but leaving the king with more questions than answers. his presence lingered in Vortigern's thoughts, a figure both ally and enigma, who held in his words the weight of Albion's future. It was the beginning of Merlin's role in the courts of kings, a path that would lead him to deeper mysteries and greater prophecies yet to unfold. When the prophecy of the dragons had been spoken, Merlin sought refuge in the solitude of the forest. He sought quiet, yet his mind was restless, heavy with the threads of fate. Beneath the ancient trees, he sat, his senses stretched across the earth, listening to the rhythms of Albion, as one listens to the heartbeat of an old friend. And as he sat, a vision rose within him, a glimpse, half seen, half felt, of what lay beyond the bounds of his knowing. He saw a mighty stag with a coat like fire and a shadow cast long upon the land. The stag moved through mist and fell light, gathering strength as it went, and from its antlers hung a blade, bright and unyielding, forged in fire. Behind the stag, others followed, bound to its path, creatures loyal yet fragile, whose trust held them to this single, winding course. But then, just at the vision's edge, Merlin saw a thorn, a dark shape lying in wait. The stag stumbled, and the followers wavered, some drawing close, others slipping back into the shadows. The forest itself seemed to tremble, touched by something that would not let go. As the vision faded, Merlin understood the weight of what he had seen. This stag, this creature of strength and solitude, would bear Albion's fate upon its antlers, bound to rise and fall as the land would. It was a path of glory and hardship, a road steeped in light yet shadowed at its edges. In that moment, Merlin knew he was bound to this future as surely as the rivers are bound to the sea. And so he remained in the forest, his heart steadying against the vision's pull, knowing that his steps were already set upon a path he could not turn from. In the depths of Albion, where even the forest dared not breathe, Merlin's steps finally brought him to a lake untouched by mortal eyes, where the water lay still as glass, reflecting the sky's every turn. It was here that I first sensed him, his presence brushing against the air like a ripple across the surface. He did not call out, nor did he rush to break the silence. Instead, he moved carefully to the lake's edge, knowing he was stepping into a realm not entirely his own. I revealed myself then, rising from the water as light filters through mist. To him, I must have seemed more spirit than flesh, a figure woven from moonlight and shadow, bound to the quiet depths. Merlin looked upon me, and for a rare moment, the weight of ages seemed to leave him. There was recognition in his gaze, a knowing that went beyond words. Our connection was immediate, yet strange, as if we were two threads crossing in a larger weave neither of us could yet see. We spoke of many things, of Albion, of the forces that move unseen beneath its hills, and of the magic that flows like rivers through the land. He was a creature of the earth, rooted in its mysteries, while I was of the waters, bound to a magic as ancient and changeable as the tides. Together, we began to share what we knew. Merlin, with all his power, taught me spells that seemed to draw the very essence from stones and trees, and I, in turn, showed him how to shape magic with fluid grace, unbound by rigid rules, a craft that shifted like water around stone. In this dance of learning and teaching, there was both discovery and a quiet, unspoken tension. For though we were bound in purpose, Merlin sensed, as I did, that such a connection came with risks. He felt it too, that foreboding, as though he could see shadows gathering on some distant horizon. Yet, he stayed, drawn to the unknown and the beauty that lived within it. He was wise, yet he did not guard his heart against me. In his eyes, I saw a willingness to accept both the gift and the danger that came with love. For Merlin, like magic itself, knew that risks and rewards were bound, inseparable. In time, we parted, though it felt less like an end than a pause, a lingering thread drawn taut between us. What lay between us was more than shared magic. It was a quiet pull from a place deeper than words. He had become part of me, as inevitable as the currents that shaped the lake's edge. And, perhaps, I had altered something within him as well, leaving marks like ripples cast upon water. Our paths were bound, woven into the tapestry of fate. Yet the full shape of it remained just out of reach, waiting. Our parting lingered like mist over the lake, carrying him toward lands far beyond. Soon, Merlin crossed into the kingdom of Powys, where he found himself upon a barren moor beneath a wind-swept sky. The air smelled of iron, marked by the recent passing of battle. And there, among his soldiers, stood Uther Pendragon, fierce and unyielding, with the look of a man who saw a kingdom within his reach, but felt the pull of shadows gathering around him. Merlin's arrival was unexpected, yet he moved with a calm that silenced the murmurs of soldiers. He met Uther's gaze steadily, and the king saw not a warrior, but a man with knowledge as deep as the roots of Albion itself. They exchanged few words, yet each acknowledged the weight the other bore. One, the weight of an unclaimed throne, and the other, the burden of knowing its future. After that meeting, Merlin entered Uther's court at Tintagel, a fortress carved from ancient stone and set upon Cornwall's storm-beaten cliffs. The castle loomed above the churning sea, its towers reaching into mist and legend, as though suspended between earth and sky. Winds swept through its halls with a scent of salt and secrets, carrying whispers of the realms beyond. Here, Merlin moved not as a warrior, but as a figure of quiet authority. In council, his presence grew, his words carefully chosen, offering glimpses of unity and a vision of a realm bound by a single rule, where loyalty would hold even the most quarrelsome lords to a common purpose. To Uther, it was a future worth fighting for. Yet it was Merlin who sensed both the potential and the peril in such ambition. Though he offered Uther guidance, Merlin remained wary. He sensed the volatility within the king. The raw strength balanced with a rashness that could see his kingdom crumble as easily as it could rise. Merlin's task was clear: to temper Uther's vision, to lay the groundwork for a lineage that would give rise to a true king, a ruler who would embody the promise Albion had whispered to him in his solitude. But such a legacy would not come without sacrifice. Merlin saw a future entwined with both glory and betrayal. And though he did not reveal this to Uther, he held the knowledge as both a guide and a warning. His role was not to control the king's fate, but to ensure that when the time came, the bloodline of Pendragon would hold strong, a line that would one day give birth to a king who could fulfill the vision Merlin had seen in Albion's ancient heart. Thus it came to pass that, within the gilded chambers of Uther's court, Merlin became more than a man. He was a keeper of fate, his purpose threaded through the kingdom's fabric, ever watchful for the day his visions would take form. Merlin was set apart from the beginning, shaped by forces that live beneath the world's surface, beyond the sight of mortal men. From the stillness of deep forests to the shadows cast by throne rooms, he carried within him the weight of Albion's ancient promise. He stepped into the courts of kings, not as one who sought power, but as a guardian of something far older, a vision woven from the land's very bones. I watched him leave behind the wild places to stand beside Uther, knowing full well what it would demand of him. Merlin chose his path with the knowledge that every word, every whisper of counsel would bind him to a destiny not his own. In guiding Uther's hand, he risked all he had learned, setting the course for a line of kings and the coming of a ruler who would bear Albion's soul. He walked willingly into a future that would ask of him more than any spell, more than any wisdom he had gained. Yet Merlin knew well the double edge of prophecy, the glory and sorrow, both entwined. He saw beyond Uther's ambitions, sensing the shadowed fate that would shape those who came after. There was, in his vision, a glimmer of hope, a kingdom bound not by conquest, but by courage and honor, a realm that might rise under the hand of one chosen by both fate and blood. But even in that hope, he sensed the seeds of heartbreak. The land itself whispered that no realm, no matter how noble, rises without sacrifice. Merlin's path was thus to set the wheels of fate in motion, to breathe life into a legacy that would endure beyond his time, even as shadows lay in wait upon its course. By this path, Merlin's story is far from an ending. It is a beginning, bound to Albion as the seasons turn. His presence lingers like a quiet wind across a lake, a promise cast upon the beaten stones of destiny, awaiting the day when his vision, both the radiance and the darkness, will finally come to pass.